Sarah Matthews had always believed that art could heal wounds invisible to the naked eye. At 28, she possessed hands that could transform blank canvases into windows of hope, even when her own world seemed painted in shades of despair. The small studio apartment in downtown London bore witness to her creative journey, its walls adorned with vibrant paintings that told stories of resilience, love, and the unwavering human spirit. The morning light filtered through her paint-stained windows as Sarah carefully mixed colors on her palette, preparing for what had become her daily ritual of creation. Her fingers, though trembling slightly from the chemotherapy treatments, moved with practiced precision across the canvas. Today's painting depicted a garden in full bloom, each flower representing a dream she refused to let wither despite her circumstances. 6 months earlier, Sarah's life had taken an unexpected turn when doctors delivered news that would forever change her perspective. Stage 3 breast cancer, they said, with a treatment plan that would test every ounce of strength she possessed. The diagnosis had initially left her feeling like a ship lost at sea, but gradually she discovered that her art became both anchor and sail, keeping her grounded while propelling her forward through the storm. Her friends and family watched with a mixture of admiration and concern as Sarah threw herself into her artwork with renewed intensity. Where others might have retreated from the world, she chose to paint it in colors more vivid than ever before. Each brushstroke became an act of defiance against the disease trying to claim her body. Every completed piece a victory flag planted firmly in the territory of hope. The local community began to take notice of Sarah's work during her treatment journey. Her paintings, displayed in the small cafe where she often sat sketching between hospital visits, drew curious glances that lingered longer than casual observation. People found themselves stopping mid-conversation to study the intricate details of her pieces, sensing something profound in the way she captured light breaking through storm clouds or the delicate strength of a bird taking flight. Mrs. Henderson, the cafe owner, had become something of an unofficial curator for Sarah's impromptu gallery. She carefully rotated the paintings weekly, ensuring that regular customers always had something new to discover. The elderly woman had watched Sarah's transformation, from a quietly confident artist to someone who painted with the urgency of a person who understood the preciousness of time. Word of Sarah's talent began spreading beyond the confines of the small cafe. Social media posts featuring her work started circulating among art enthusiasts and cancer support groups alike. Her paintings carried a quality that transcended mere technical skill. They possessed an emotional authenticity that spoke directly to viewers' hearts. Comments poured in from strangers around the world, sharing their own stories of struggle and finding comfort in the hope Sarah's artwork radiated. The recognition brought opportunities Sarah had never imagined possible. A local gallery owner approached her about hosting a solo exhibition, proposing to donate a portion of the proceeds to cancer research. The idea both thrilled and terrified her, as it would mean sharing her most vulnerable artistic expressions with a broader audience than she had ever anticipated. As Sarah considered the gallery owner's proposal, she found herself painting with even greater intensity. Her latest series explored themes of transformation, depicting caterpillars emerging as butterflies, seeds sprouting into mighty trees, and storms giving way to brilliant rainbows. Each piece served as both personal meditation and universal message about the possibility of beauty arising from struggle. The chemotherapy sessions, once dreaded appointments that drained her energy and spirit, gradually became planning sessions for her upcoming exhibition. Sarah would sit in the treatment chair, IV dripping life-saving medicine into her veins while sketching ideas for new paintings in a worn notebook she carried everywhere. Fellow patients began gathering around her during treatments, drawn to the gentle scratch of pencil on paper and the glimpses of hope her drawings provided. Dr. Williams, her oncologist, had initially worried that the stress of preparing for an exhibition might interfere with Sarah's treatment and recovery. However, he soon recognized that her art served as powerful medicine, providing her with purpose and joy that seemed to accelerate her healing process. He began encouraging other patients to find their own creative outlets, having witnessed firsthand the positive impact of artistic expression on overall well-being. The exhibition date was set for 3 months away, giving Sarah time to complete her series while continuing her treatment regimen. She threw herself into the work with a determination that impressed everyone around her. Friends and family members took turns helping with practical aspects of preparation, from framing paintings to designing promotional materials, creating a support network that wrapped around Sarah like a warm embrace. As the weeks passed, Sarah's apartment transformed into a bustling creative workshop. Canvases in various stages of completion lined every available wall space, while supplies overflowed from makeshift storage areas. The controlled chaos reflected her internal state, a mind brimming with ideas and emotions demanding expression through color and form. The anticipation building around the exhibition created a sense of momentum that carried Sarah through her most difficult treatment days. When nausea or fatigue threatened to overwhelm her, she would focus on a particular painting in progress, imagining how it would look, hanging in the gallery surrounded by people whose lives might be touched by her story. Local media began showing interest in Sarah's journey, requesting interviews and photo sessions that would help promote the upcoming exhibition. She approached these opportunities with characteristic grace, using each platform to advocate for cancer awareness, while emphasizing the healing power of creative expression. Her message resonated far beyond the art community, reaching people who had never considered themselves interested in paintings but found themselves drawn to the human story behind the brushstrokes. The foundation for something extraordinary had been laid through months of dedicated work, unwavering determination, and the quiet support of a community that recognized they were witnessing something special unfold. Sarah's journey from diagnosis to artistic revelation was approaching a crescendo that would test everything she had learned about courage, creativity, and the unpredictable ways life can surprise those who refuse to surrender to circumstance. The morning of Sarah's exhibition opening arrived with an unseasonably warm October day, as if nature itself wanted to celebrate the occasion. Sarah stood in her apartment bathroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror while adjusting the colorful silk scarf that had become her signature accessory since losing her hair to chemotherapy. The reflection looking back at her bore little resemblance to the woman she had been 6 months ago. Yet somehow she felt more authentically herself than ever before. Gallery owner Marcus Webb had arrived early to oversee the final preparations, his usual calm demeanor betraying hints of excitement about what he anticipated would be one of the most meaningful exhibitions his space had ever hosted. He moved through the gallery with practiced efficiency, adjusting lighting and repositioning pieces to create the perfect flow for visitors who would soon fill the intimate space. Sarah's paintings hung throughout the gallery like windows into her soul, each piece carefully positioned to create a narrative journey from darkness toward light. The opening piece, painted during her first week of chemotherapy, depicted a lone figure standing at the edge of a vast ocean, waves crashing at her feet, while stars began emerging in the darkening sky above. The final painting in the series showed that same figure now dancing among those stars, arms outstretched in celebration of survival and joy. Local newspapers had featured preview articles about the exhibition, describing Sarah as an emerging artist whose work transcended traditional boundaries between personal expression and universal themes. The attention had generated significant interest from both art collectors and community members who simply wanted to support someone whose story had touched their hearts. Dr. Williams arrived among the first guests, accompanied by several nursing staff members who had become invested in Sarah's journey during her treatment sessions. They moved through the gallery with quiet reverence, recognizing intimate details from conversations they had shared during chemotherapy appointments. The painting of hands reaching toward sunlight brought tears to Nurse Patricia's eyes as she remembered holding Sarah's hand during her most difficult moments. Mrs. Henderson, from the cafe, brought a small group of regular customers who had watched Sarah's work evolve week by week on the cafe walls. They clustered around familiar pieces, sharing memories of mornings when they had watched Sarah sketch while sipping coffee between medical appointments. The elderly woman beamed with pride as she overheard strangers discussing the emotional impact of paintings she had been among the first to appreciate. As the evening progressed, the gallery filled with an unusually diverse crowd. Art enthusiasts mingled with cancer survivors, medical professionals chatted with neighborhood residents, and curious strangers found themselves drawn into conversations about hope, healing, and the transformative power of creative expression. The atmosphere buzzed with an energy that Marcus had rarely experienced in his years of hosting exhibitions. Sarah moved through the crowd with grace that belied her recent struggles, stopping to chat with visitors who wanted to share their own stories or simply express their admiration for her courage. She discovered that many attendees had personal connections to cancer, whether as survivors themselves or supporters of loved ones facing similar battles. Each conversation reinforced her growing understanding of how individual struggles could become sources of collective strength. A young woman named Emma approached Sarah near a painting depicting a tree growing through concrete pavement, its branches reaching toward patches of sky visible between urban buildings. Emma explained that she had been recently diagnosed with the same type of cancer and felt terrified about the journey ahead. She had seen Sarah's story online and decided to attend the exhibition hoping to find some measure of courage for her own battle. Sarah spent nearly an hour talking with Emma, sharing practical advice about treatment, while emphasizing the importance of finding personal sources of strength and meaning during difficult times. They stood together in front of the tree painting, discussing how growth could occur in the most unlikely circumstances when conditions were right. Other visitors gradually joined their conversation, creating an impromptu support circle around the artwork. The gallery's guest book filled with messages that went far beyond typical exhibition comments. Visitors wrote lengthy reflections about their own experiences with illness, loss, recovery, and discovery of inner strength they never knew they possessed. Some left contact information, hoping to connect with Sarah or other attendees who had shared similar journeys. The book became a testament to the power of art to create community around shared human experiences. Marcus watched the evening unfold with growing amazement at how Sarah's work had created something far beyond a traditional art opening. People lingered longer than usual, reluctant to leave the atmosphere of hope and connection that had developed organically throughout the gallery space. Several visitors returned to specific paintings multiple times, discovering new details or meanings with each viewing. Local television news crew arrived midway through the evening, having heard about the exhibition through social media buzz generated by early attendees. The reporter, initially planning a brief human interest segment, found herself staying much longer than anticipated as she recognized the significance of what was happening. She conducted impromptu interviews with visitors who spoke eloquently about how Sarah's story and artwork had impacted their perspective on challenges in their own lives. Sarah's family members, who had traveled from various cities to attend the opening, watched with mixed emotions as strangers connected deeply with paintings that documented their daughters, sisters, and nieces' most vulnerable moments. They felt immense pride in her accomplishment, while also processing their own journey through her illness and recovery. The evening served as both celebration and healing ritual for everyone who had supported Sarah through her treatment. As the formal opening hours drew to a close, a small group of attendees remained, unwilling to break the spell that had been cast throughout the evening. Sarah found herself at the center of animated discussions about future collaborations, potential workshops for other patients, and ways to expand the conversation about art as a tool for healing and community building. The success of the evening exceeded everyone's expectations, but more importantly, it had created lasting connections between people who might never have found each other without Sarah's courage to share her story through paint and canvas. The exhibition had become a catalyst for something larger than any individual artwork, transforming a simple gallery opening into the beginning of a movement that would soon reach far beyond the walls of Marcus's intimate space. 3 weeks after her successful exhibition opening, Sarah received a phone call that would change the trajectory of her artistic journey in ways she could never have imagined. The voice on the other end belonged to Lady Catherine Pemberton, a member of the royal family's charitable foundation committee, who had learned about Sarah's work through a friend who attended the gallery opening. Lady Catherine explained that the Royal Foundation was planning their annual charity gala, an event that traditionally raised funds for various causes close to the royal family's heart. This year, they wanted to focus on supporting cancer research and patient care services, and Sarah's story had caught their attention as a powerful example of hope and resilience in the face of adversity. The invitation was both thrilling and overwhelming. Sarah would be asked to display several of her paintings at the gala, with the potential for significant exposure to influential collectors and philanthropists. More importantly, a portion of any sales would benefit the cancer research facility where she had received her own treatment. The event would take place at a historic London venue, with members of the royal family expected to attend. Sarah spent the following days in a whirlwind of preparation, working with Lady Catherine's team to select pieces that would best represent her journey, while appealing to the sophisticated audience expected at the gala. They chose 8 paintings spanning the full arc of her experience, from the darkest moments of diagnosis through the celebration of survival and newfound purpose. The Logistics of preparing for such a high-profile event proved more complex than anything Sarah had previously encountered. Security protocols required detailed background checks, while presentation standards demanded professional-grade framing and display materials far beyond her usual budget. The Royal Foundation's staff guided her through each requirement with patience and understanding, recognizing that she was navigating unfamiliar territory. Marcus Webb offered his gallery as a staging area for the final preparations, helping Sarah coordinate with professional art handlers who would transport her work to the gala venue. The small space that had hosted her intimate exhibition just weeks earlier now bustled with activity as experts carefully wrapped and cataloged each piece for the grand event. During the preparation period, Sarah continued her chemotherapy treatments, though her oncologist had adjusted the schedule to ensure she would be feeling her strongest. On the night of the gala, Dr. Williams expressed amazement at how the anticipation of the event seemed to energize rather than exhaust his patient, noting improvements in her overall condition that he attributed partly to her sense of purpose and excitement. The media attention surrounding Sarah's participation in the Royal Gala began building steadily as the event date approached. Arts journalists and society reporters requested interviews, eager to learn more about the woman whose cancer journey had led to royal recognition. Sarah approached these opportunities thoughtfully, using each platform to advocate for cancer research funding while sharing the personal insights she had gained through her artistic practice. One particularly meaningful interview took place at the hospital, where Sarah received her treatments. Seated in the chemotherapy ward surrounded by her paintings, she spoke with a documentary filmmaker about the role of creativity in healing. Other patients participated in the discussion, sharing their own experiences with art therapy and creative expression as tools for coping with illness and treatment side effects. The documentary crew captured footage of Sarah working on a new painting specifically commissioned for the gala, a piece that would be presented as a gift to the royal family in appreciation for their support of cancer research. The work depicted a garden where flowers of every color imaginable bloomed together in perfect harmony, symbolizing the diversity of people whose lives had been touched by cancer and the beauty that could emerge from shared struggles. As the gala date approached, Sarah found herself experiencing a mixture of excitement and nervousness unlike anything she had felt during her initial exhibition. The scale and significance of the event seemed almost surreal, particularly when she considered that just months earlier she had been struggling to imagine a future beyond her diagnosis and treatment. Lady Catherine arranged for Sarah to visit the gala venue several days before the event, allowing her to see the space where her paintings would be displayed and to meet with the exhibition design team. Walking through the grand hall where kings and queens had once held court, Sarah felt overwhelmed by the historical significance of the moment and her small but meaningful place within it. The venue's ornate architecture provided a stunning backdrop for contemporary artwork, creating an intriguing juxtaposition between old-world elegance and modern artistic expression. Sarah's paintings would hang alongside works by established masters, a placement that both honored her achievement and challenged her to rise to the occasion with grace and confidence. During the venue visit, Sarah met several other artists whose work would be featured at the gala, discovering a community of creators who used their talents to support charitable causes. These conversations provided reassurance that her presence at the event was warranted not only by her personal story but also by the quality and impact of her artistic work. The final week, before the gala, passed in a blur of last-minute preparations, media interviews, and quiet moments of reflection on how dramatically her life had changed since her diagnosis. Sarah spent hours in her studio, not painting but simply sitting among her works and processing the journey that had brought her to this unprecedented opportunity. Friends and family members who had supported Sarah throughout her treatment expressed amazement at the turn her life had taken, though they acknowledged that her strength and creativity had always suggested she was destined for something special. The upcoming gala represented not just personal achievement, but validation of their collective belief in her ability to transform adversity into art. The night before the event, Sarah lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with anticipation and gratitude for the unexpected path her life had taken. Tomorrow would bring her face to face with royalty, prominent collectors and influential philanthropists, all gathered in support of causes that had become deeply personal to her through her own experience with cancer. She thought about Emma, the young woman she had met at her gallery opening, and the many other cancer patients whose stories had become woven into her own, through shared conversations and mutual support. Tomorrow's event would represent not just her individual journey, but the collective hopes and dreams of everyone who had found meaning in her artistic expression of survival and resilience. The evening of the Royal Charity Gala arrived with all the anticipation and grandeur Sarah had imagined, yet the reality exceeded even her most ambitious expectations. She stood in the ornate dressing room provided by the venue, adjusting her elegant navy dress and the delicate silver jewelry her mother had insisted she borrow for the occasion. The reflection in the antique mirror showed a woman transformed not just by her illness and recovery, but by the confidence that comes from discovering one's true purpose. Lady Catherine had arranged for Sarah to arrive early, allowing her to see the final installation of her paintings before the guests began arriving. Walking through the grand hall, she felt momentarily overwhelmed by the sight of her deeply personal artwork displayed among priceless historical pieces and contemporary masters. The professional lighting cast her paintings in a warm glow that seemed to make the colors more vibrant than she remembered, while elegant plaques provided context about her journey and the charitable cause her participation supported. The first guests to arrive were members of the press, photographers and journalists who moved efficiently through the space, documenting the evening's preparations. Sarah found herself surprisingly comfortable during the brief interviews, drawing on weeks of media training to articulate her message about the healing power of art and the importance of supporting cancer research. Her natural warmth and authenticity shone through despite the formal setting. As the main reception began, Sarah positioned herself near her paintings, greeting guests who stopped to admire her work and learn more about her story. The conversations ranged from technical discussions about painting techniques to deeply personal shares from attendees who had their own connections to cancer. Each interaction reinforced her growing understanding of how individual struggles could create universal connections. Prominent art collectors and philanthropists approached throughout the evening, expressing genuine interest in both her current work and future projects. Several indicated their desire to purchase pieces, with proceeds benefiting the Cancer Research Foundation. Sarah felt gratitude not just for the financial support these sales would provide, but for the recognition that her art had achieved a level of quality and significance that transcended its origins in personal struggle. Dr. Williams arrived midway through the reception, accompanied by his wife and several colleagues from the hospital, where Sarah had received her treatment. Seeing familiar faces from her medical team in this glamorous setting created a surreal moment that perfectly captured the unexpected journey her life had taken. They stood together before her paintings, sharing memories of the difficult days when creating such beauty seemed impossible. The evening's formal program began with speeches from Royal Foundation board members, cancer research scientists, and a survivor who shared her own story of diagnosis, treatment, and recovery. Each speaker emphasized the importance of hope, community support, and continued investment in research that could improve outcomes for future patients. Sarah listened from her designated seat near the front of the audience, feeling honored to be included among such distinguished company. When Lady Catherine called Sarah to the podium to address the audience, she felt a moment of nervousness before drawing on the strength she had discovered during her most challenging times. Her speech focused on the transformative power of finding purpose within struggle, the importance of supporting others facing similar battles, and her gratitude for the opportunity to contribute to causes that had become central to her own healing journey. The audience's response exceeded anything Sarah had experienced during her previous speaking engagements. The sustained applause seemed to acknowledge not just her words, but the courage represented by her entire journey from diagnosis to this moment of recognition and celebration. Several attendees approached afterward to share how her story had impacted their own perspective on facing difficult circumstances. During the dinner portion of the evening, Sarah found herself seated at a table with accomplished artists, medical researchers, and philanthropists whose work she had long admired from afar. The conversations ranged from discussions of artistic technique to cutting-edge cancer research developments, creating an intellectually stimulating environment that challenged her to engage at a level she had never previously attempted. The table's most distinguished guest was a renowned painter, whose work Sarah had studied during her art school years, never imagining she would someday share a meal with such an accomplished artist. Their discussion about the relationship between personal experience and artistic expression provided insights that would influence Sarah's future work, while his encouragement about her potential career trajectory felt both validating and inspiring. As the evening progressed toward its climax, anticipation built around the announced appearance of members of the royal family, who were expected to tour the art displays and meet with featured artists. Sarah felt her nervousness returning as she considered the protocol requirements Lady Catherine had carefully reviewed with her. But she also experienced excitement about representing not just herself, but all cancer patients who had found strength through creative expression. The moment arrived with characteristic, understated elegance as the royal party entered the exhibition area, accompanied by a small entourage of security personnel and foundation staff. Sarah watched from her designated position as they moved methodically through the displays, spending considerable time examining each featured artist's contribution to the evening's charitable mission. When the royal group reached Sarah's section of the exhibition, Lady Catherine performed the formal introductions with practiced grace. Sarah executed the curtsy she had rehearsed, then found herself engaged in conversation that felt surprisingly natural, despite the formal circumstances. The genuine interest shown in her story and artwork helped ease her anxiety, allowing her personality and passion for her cause to shine through. The discussion that followed exceeded the brief encounter Sarah had anticipated, developing into a meaningful exchange about the role of art in healing, the importance of supporting cancer research, and the remarkable journey that had brought her to this extraordinary moment. Questions about her painting process, her ongoing treatment, and her future artistic plans demonstrated a level of personal interest that left Sarah feeling truly heard and valued. As the royal visit concluded and the evening began winding down, Sarah reflected on the series of seemingly impossible events that had led to this pinnacle moment in her life. The combination of her cancer diagnosis, her decision to channel her experience into art, and the unexpected recognition that followed had created a narrative that felt almost too remarkable to be real. Yet every moment had been lived with authentic emotion and genuine purpose. The successful conclusion of the royal gala represented not just a personal triumph but a validation of the path Sarah had chosen in response to her life-changing diagnosis. The evening had exceeded every expectation, creating new opportunities and connections that would influence her future in ways she was only beginning to understand. In the weeks following the royal charity gala, Sarah's life transformed in ways that extended far beyond her artistic career. The media coverage generated by her appearance at the prestigious event had created a platform she never could have imagined, bringing opportunities that both excited and challenged her to grow beyond her previous limitations. International art galleries began reaching out with exhibition proposals, while publishers expressed interest in documenting her journey through a biographical book that would combine her artwork with her personal story of survival and transformation. Each opportunity required careful consideration, as Sarah worked to balance her artistic integrity with the commercial possibilities that suddenly surrounded her. The most meaningful development came through an unexpected source. A representative from Buckingham Palace contacted Sarah with a proposal that left her speechless with amazement and gratitude. The royal family wanted to commission her to create a special piece that would be displayed permanently in one of their residences, serving as a lasting symbol of hope for others facing similar struggles. The commission represented more than professional recognition. It offered Sarah the chance to create something that would inspire future generations of people dealing with life-threatening illnesses. The subject matter was left entirely to her discretion, with the only requirement being that the piece should embody the themes of resilience, hope, and the triumph of the human spirit that had characterized her journey. Sarah spent countless hours conceptualizing the commission piece, knowing that this single work would likely define her legacy as an artist. She visited the location where it would hang, studying the light conditions and architectural elements that would influence how the painting would be perceived by viewers. The weight of responsibility felt immense, but also energizing in a way that reminded her of the focused determination she had discovered during her treatment. While working on preliminary sketches for the Royal Commission, Sarah continued her regular chemotherapy treatments, now approaching the final stages of her prescribed protocol. Dr. Williams expressed amazement at her continued strength and positive outlook, attributing her remarkable progress partly to the sense of purpose and accomplishment that had defined her recent months. The treatment center had become an unofficial gallery for Sarah's work, with prints of her paintings displayed throughout the chemotherapy ward to inspire other patients. Sarah often spent time between her own appointments talking with newly diagnosed patients, sharing her story and encouraging them to find their own sources of strength and meaning during treatment. Emma, the young woman Sarah had met at her gallery opening, had become a regular visitor and close friend. Her own treatment was progressing well, and she credited Sarah's example with helping her maintain hope during the most difficult phases of chemotherapy. Their friendship had deepened through shared experiences and mutual support, creating a bond that extended far beyond their initial connection over art. The success of Sarah's participation in the Royal Gala had also brought unexpected attention from medical professionals interested in the therapeutic applications of artistic expression. Several hospitals requested her involvement in developing art therapy programs for cancer patients, recognizing the powerful example her own journey provided for the healing potential of creative pursuits. Dr. Williams collaborated with Sarah on a research study examining the correlation between artistic engagement and treatment outcomes, hoping to provide scientific validation for observations he had made throughout her care. The preliminary data suggested significant benefits for patients who maintained creative practices during treatment, supporting arguments for increased funding of art therapy programs in medical settings. As Sarah worked on the Royal Commission, she found herself reflecting deeply on the journey that had brought her to this extraordinary point. The painting slowly emerging on her canvas depicted a figure emerging from darkness into brilliant light, arms outstretched in celebration and gratitude. The technique she employed drew on everything she had learned about color, composition, and emotional expression, while the subject matter remained deeply personal yet universally meaningful. The commission deadline was still months away, but Sarah approached the work with methodical dedication, understanding that this piece would represent not just her individual story, but the experiences of countless others who had faced similar challenges. Every brushstroke carried the weight of that responsibility while also serving as an expression of the joy and purpose she had discovered through her ordeal. Media interviews about the Royal Commission provided Sarah with additional platforms to advocate for cancer research funding and art therapy programs. She spoke eloquently about the healing power of creativity, drawing on her personal experience to make compelling arguments for supporting both medical research and holistic approaches to patient care. The documentary filmmaker who had interviewed Sarah at the hospital was now completing a feature-length film about her journey, from diagnosis through the Royal Gala and beyond. Early screenings for focus groups had generated overwhelmingly positive responses, suggesting the film could have significant impact in raising awareness about both cancer issues and the therapeutic value of artistic expression. International speaking engagements began filling Sarah's calendar as organizations around the world requested her participation in conferences about cancer survivorship, art therapy, and finding meaning in adversity. Each appearance required careful scheduling around her continuing treatment, but the opportunities to share her message with diverse audiences felt like natural extensions of her artistic mission. The financial success from her artwork sales had eliminated the economic stress that often compounds the challenges of serious illness, allowing Sarah to focus entirely on her recovery and artistic development. She established a small foundation to support other cancer patients interested in pursuing creative projects during treatment, providing supplies and instruction for those who wanted to explore art as a healing tool. As winter approached, Sarah's treatment protocol was nearing completion, with Dr. Williams expressing cautious optimism about her prognosis. The combination of aggressive medical intervention, strong support systems, and her own determination had produced results that exceeded initial expectations. Though Sarah understood that vigilance would remain necessary for years to come, the Royal Commission painting was taking shape in ways that surprised even Sarah with its power and beauty. The central figure had evolved into a representation that transcended individual identity, becoming a universal symbol of human resilience that could speak to anyone facing overwhelming challenges. The background incorporated elements from throughout her artistic journey, creating a visual narrative that connected her earliest works with her most sophisticated achievements. Gallery directors from around the world continued expressing interest in Sarah's future work, while collectors competed for pieces from her existing portfolio. The attention felt gratifying but also somewhat overwhelming, requiring Sarah to carefully consider how to manage her newfound fame without losing the authentic connection to personal experience that had made her art so compelling in the first place. The crisp February morning brought news that Sarah had been hoping to hear for nearly a year. Dr. Williams called personally to deliver the results of her latest scans, his voice carrying the warmth of genuine celebration as he informed her that she was now officially in remission. The cancer that had threatened to derail her life had been defeated, though regular monitoring would continue for years to ensure it remained at bay. Sarah sat in her studio apartment, surrounded by the paintings that had carried her through the darkest period of her life, processing the magnitude of what she had just heard. The word remission felt almost too precious to fully embrace, yet the relief flooding through her body confirmed that some part of her had been holding her breath for months, waiting for this moment of liberation. The timing of the news felt particularly significant as she was putting the finishing touches on her royal commission, a piece that had evolved into perhaps her most powerful work yet. The painting seemed to pulse with life as she added final details to the figure emerging from darkness, as if the artwork itself was celebrating her medical victory alongside her. Lady Catherine had scheduled the formal presentation of the commissioned piece for the following month, an event that would mark not just the completion of the project but Sarah's transition from cancer patient to cancer survivor. The distinction felt monumental, representing a fundamental shift in how she understood her identity and future possibilities. The documentary about Sarah's journey was scheduled for release to coincide with Cancer Awareness Month, with early reviews praising its honest portrayal of both the struggles and triumphs associated with serious illness. Preview screenings had moved audiences to tears while also inspiring them with hope, achieving the filmmaker's goal of creating something that would genuinely help others facing similar challenges. Sarah's foundation for supporting cancer patients interested in art therapy had grown beyond her initial modest vision, receiving donations from individuals inspired by her story, as well as grants from larger charitable organizations. The program now provided supplies and instruction to patients at 5 different hospitals, with plans to expand to additional facilities throughout the year. Emma had also received encouraging news about her own treatment progress, with doctors expressing optimism about her response to chemotherapy. The two women had become inseparable friends, supporting each other through the ongoing challenges of recovery while celebrating each milestone along the way. Their friendship had become a source of strength that extended far beyond their shared experience with cancer. As Sarah prepared for the Royal Commission presentation ceremony, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed since that morning, nearly a year ago, when she had received her initial diagnosis. The woman who had once feared that cancer would end her story had instead discovered that it had been the beginning of her most important chapter. The ceremony took place at Windsor Castle, with members of the royal family present to receive the commissioned artwork and acknowledge Sarah's remarkable journey. Standing in the historic Great Hall where her painting would hang for generations to come, Sarah felt overwhelmed by the honor, while also recognizing how far she had traveled from the frightened woman who had first heard the word cancer applied to her own body. The presentation included remarks from Sarah about the healing power of art and the importance of maintaining hope during life's most challenging moments. Her words, delivered to the distinguished audience with confidence born from authentic experience, carried weight that no amount of formal training could have provided. The response was deeply moving, with several attendees visibly emotional as they recognized the profound journey her story represented. Following the ceremony, Sarah was invited to tour the Royal Art Collection, viewing masterpieces by history's greatest artists while accompanied by curators who spoke knowledgeably about technique, historical context, and artistic significance. The experience felt surreal as she considered her own work now joining this prestigious company, yet also entirely appropriate given the path her life had taken. The media coverage of the Royal Commission presentation reached international audiences, bringing Sarah's story to people around the world who found inspiration in her transformation from cancer patient to celebrated artist. Letters and emails poured in from individuals sharing their own stories of overcoming adversity, creating a global community connected by shared experiences of struggle and triumph. Art galleries from major cities extended increasingly prestigious exhibition offers while collectors competed for opportunities to acquire her work. Sarah approached these opportunities thoughtfully, wanting to maintain the authentic connection between her art and personal experience that had made it so meaningful to others, while also embracing the professional possibilities her success had created. The success of her art therapy foundation had attracted attention from major medical institutions interested in incorporating creative programming into their patient care protocols. Sarah found herself consulting with hospital administrators and medical professionals about implementing programs that could provide the same kind of healing support she had discovered during her own treatment. Dr. Williams had become something of a celebrity himself through his association with Sarah's story, frequently invited to speak at medical conferences about the importance of supporting patients' emotional and creative needs alongside traditional treatment protocols. His collaboration with Sarah on research examining the correlation between artistic engagement and healing outcomes was generating significant interest in the medical community. The research study they had conducted was showing remarkable results. With cancer patients who participated in structured art therapy programs, demonstrating measurably better treatment outcomes compared to control groups. The data was compelling enough to attract funding for expanded studies, potentially revolutionizing how hospitals approach comprehensive patient care. As spring arrived, Sarah felt ready to take on new challenges that would extend her impact beyond individual artistic achievement. She began developing a comprehensive program that would train other cancer survivors to become art therapy facilitators, multiplying her ability to reach patients who could benefit from creative expression during treatment. The program's first cohort included Emma and several other survivors Sarah had met during her own journey, individuals whose personal experiences with cancer uniquely qualified them to support others facing similar challenges. The training combined practical art instruction with counseling techniques and medical knowledge, creating a holistic approach to patient support. Sarah's apartment studio had become too small for her expanding activities, leading her to lease a larger space that could accommodate both her personal artwork and the growing administrative needs of her foundation. The new studio featured areas for individual work, group instruction, and meetings with the medical professionals who increasingly sought her collaboration. International recognition continued growing as Sarah's story reached new audiences through translated versions of the documentary and articles in foreign publications. Invitations arrived from cancer centers and art institutions around the world, requesting her participation in conferences and exhibitions that would share her message with diverse cultural communities. The Royal Commission painting had found its permanent home in a location where thousands of visitors would encounter it annually, each person potentially touched by the message of hope and resilience it conveyed. Reports from palace staff indicated that the piece had already become a focal point for visitors, many spending extended time contemplating its meaning and message. Sarah's relationship with the royal family had evolved into ongoing collaboration on charitable initiatives related to cancer awareness and art therapy promotion. She found herself regularly consulted on projects that combined her areas of expertise, lending credibility to efforts that might reach influential decision-makers in healthcare and arts funding. The second anniversary of her diagnosis approached, with Sarah reflecting on the journey that had transformed every aspect of her existence. The date that had once represented the beginning of her greatest fear had become a milestone worth celebrating, marking not just survival, but the discovery of purpose she never could have imagined. Plans were underway for a major retrospective exhibition that would display her complete artistic journey from diagnosis through recovery and beyond. The show would tour internationally, carrying her message of hope to cancer patients and survivors around the world, while raising funds for research and art therapy programs. As Sarah stood in her new studio, surrounded by works in progress and plans for future projects, she felt profound gratitude for the unexpected path her life had taken. The cancer that had threatened to end her story had instead revealed her true calling, connecting her with a global community of individuals who found strength and inspiration in her example of transforming adversity into art and purpose. 5 years had passed since Sarah first heard the word cancer changed the trajectory of her life, and the woman who now stood before the crowd of 300 cancer patients, survivors, and medical professionals bore little resemblance to the frightened person who had once believed her diagnosis meant the end of everything meaningful. The International Conference Center in Geneva buzzed with anticipation as Sarah prepared to deliver the keynote address that would conclude a week-long symposium on integrative cancer care. Her Art Therapy Foundation had grown into a globally recognized organization operating in 12 countries, training hundreds of survivor facilitators who brought creative healing programs to cancer patients worldwide. The ripple effect of her initial decision to channel her fear into artistic expression had touched thousands of lives, creating a movement that extended far beyond anything she could have envisioned during those dark early days of treatment. Dr. Williams sat in the front row, his presence at the conference representing the medical community's growing acceptance of holistic approaches to cancer care. The research they had pioneered together had been replicated internationally, producing consistent evidence that patients who engaged in structured creative activities during treatment experienced better outcomes across multiple measures of physical and emotional well-being. Emma, now 5 years cancer-free herself, served as Sarah's Foundation's International Program Director, coordinating art therapy initiatives across continents while pursuing her own artistic development. Their friendship had evolved into a professional partnership that perfectly combined Emma's organizational skills with Sarah's vision and creative leadership, creating an effective team that multiplied their individual impact. The Royal Commission painting had indeed become a beacon of hope for countless visitors to Windsor Castle, with palace staff reporting that viewers often spent extended periods contemplating its message before sharing their own stories of struggle and triumph with tour guides. The piece had inspired similar commissions from other institutions, creating a series of artworks that served as permanent symbols of resilience in locations around the world. Sarah's personal artistic career had flourished alongside her advocacy work, with her paintings now included in major museum collections and private galleries throughout Europe and North America. Critics praised her unique ability to transform personal trauma into universal messages of hope, while collectors valued both the aesthetic quality and emotional authenticity of her work. The documentary about her journey had won several international awards and continued generating impact years after its initial release. Medical schools now used it as a teaching tool to help future doctors understand the importance of treating patients as whole human beings, rather than just collections of symptoms, while cancer support groups worldwide screened it for newly diagnosed patients seeking inspiration. As Sarah approached the podium to address the Geneva conference, she carried with her a leather portfolio containing sketches for her latest project, a series of murals planned for children's cancer wards in hospitals across 3 continents. The drawings represented her continuing evolution as an artist while maintaining her commitment to using creativity as a tool for healing and hope. Her speech began with acknowledgement of everyone in the audience who had transformed their own difficult experiences into sources of strength for others, recognizing that her individual story was part of a larger tapestry of human resilience. She spoke about the unexpected gifts that could emerge from life's greatest challenges, emphasizing that finding meaning in suffering didn't minimize its reality but could transform its impact. The audience listened with rapt attention as Sarah described her journey from diagnosis to remission to purpose, sharing both the darkest moments of fear and doubt alongside the gradual discovery of strength she never knew she possessed. Her words carried the authenticity that only comes from lived experience, connecting with listeners who recognize their own struggles reflected in her narrative. Midway through her address, Sarah paused to acknowledge a special guest in the audience, a young boy named Marcus who had traveled from London with his parents to attend the conference. Marcus had been diagnosed with leukemia 6 months earlier and had begun participating in Sarah's art therapy program at his treatment center. His artwork, displayed on easels around the conference hall, showed remarkable talent and emotional depth despite his young age. The moment that would later be remembered as the climax of the conference occurred when Sarah invited Marcus to join her on stage, where together they unveiled a collaborative painting they had created during his treatment sessions. The piece depicted a garden where flowers of every imaginable color bloomed together, representing the diversity of patients whose lives had been touched by cancer while celebrating the beauty that could emerge from shared struggle. As Marcus spoke briefly about how painting had helped him cope with his treatment, many audience members found themselves moved to tears by his eloquence and courage. His words carried the same authentic power that had characterized Sarah's own journey, demonstrating how the cycle of inspiration and support continued across generations of patients and survivors. The standing ovation that followed lasted nearly 10 minutes, with audience members recognizing they had witnessed something extraordinary in the connection between Sarah and Marcus, a living example of how one person's journey through adversity could create light for others walking similar paths. The moment perfectly encapsulated everything the conference had sought to achieve in promoting comprehensive, compassionate cancer care. Following the conference, Sarah returned to London with renewed energy for the challenges and opportunities ahead. Plans were already underway for a permanent center that would serve as international headquarters for her foundation, while providing space for research, training, and direct patient services. The facility would combine state-of-the-art medical research capabilities with world-class art studios, creating a unique environment where healing could occur through multiple modalities. As she sat in her expanded studio that evening, reviewing sketches for the Children's Hospital murals while planning her foundation's next phase of growth, Sarah reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought her to this point. The cancer that had once threatened to destroy her life had instead revealed a purpose and passion that continued, growing stronger with each passing year. The young woman, who had once feared that her diagnosis meant the end of her story, had instead discovered it was the beginning of her most important chapter, one that would continue inspiring others long after her own journey had concluded. In transforming her personal struggle into universal hope, Sarah had found the greatest gift cancer could never take away: the knowledge that even life's greatest challenges could become sources of unimaginable beauty and meaning.